The Pacific doesn't keep secrets. It just buries them. A town on the water. Everyone knows your name. Everyone knows what you owe. November. A teacher was found dead. Before his coffee went cold, someone had already confessed. 6:17 a.m. 11 years at that desk. Nothing like this. Reuben Cole, fisherman, 67, walked in without a lawyer, without a phone call. Reuben Cole, fisherman, 67, walked in without a lawyer, without a phone call. 3 words. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down to wait. Not guilt in those eyes. Something older, something long resolved. Saoirse Dunne, born here, left, came back. Some confessions are not what they seem. Saoirse had been called at 6:45. By the time she arrived, Reuben Cole had been in the holding room for 23 minutes. He had not asked for water, not for a lawyer, not for anything at all. Officer Briggs met her in the corridor, clipboard in hand, looking like a man who'd pulled something out of the water and had no idea what category it belonged to. What did he say? 4 words, Briggs answered. I killed Thomas Wren. She took the file. Thomas Wren, 41, history teacher, found at 6 a.m. by a neighbor walking her dog. No signs of forced entry. No visible trauma at the scene. Cause of death still pending. The room smelled like wet canvas and old coffee. Reuben Cole was not waiting to be caught. He had come here the way a person goes to a doctor when they already know the diagnosis, because the knowing had become unbearable to carry alone. Whatever this was, it was not panic. It was not a mistake. It was an arrival. She sat, set the file on the table, didn't open it. Mr. Cole! He looked at her. His eyes were steady. You're the detective, he said. Not a question. I am. He nodded once. The nod of a man who had been waiting for the right person to arrive. 20 years of interviews. She could read silence the way some people read weather. Reuben Cole was not afraid, not calculating, not performing. What he was, she couldn't name yet, but her gut, the same one that had pulled her back to this town she'd spent 18 years running from, said, this man is telling the truth. Just not about the thing he thinks. Tell me how it happened, she said. The hum of the lamp. Rain against the single high window. Then, I need you to understand something first. She waited. I came here to confess, Reuben said. But I did not come here to lie. He told her everything, start to finish. A clear, ordered account. The kind a man produces when he's rehearsed it. Thomas Wren. The argument. The path behind the cliffside houses. What he said he did there. Saoirse listened without interrupting. She wrote nothing down. The problem wasn't what he said. The problem was what he didn't know. The murder weapon, he named the wrong kind. The path, he placed it 30 meters north of the actual route. In Thomas Wren's front door, Reuben said he left it open. Crime scene photos showed it locked from inside. She slid the photograph across. What did you use? He told her. She left a 3-count of silence between them. The coroner disagrees. She said. He looked at the photo. Something moved behind his eyes. Not guilt. Recalibration. Like a man checking a map and finding the road has been redrawn. Mr. Cole. She closed the file. You did not kill Thomas Wren. The lamp hummed. Rain found the window again. He looked at his hands, then very quietly. No. But I was going to. 20 years. She had heard every shape a confession could take. But not this one. Not a man who confessed to a murder he didn't commit. Because he had arrived to commit it, found someone had beaten him there, and decided the confession was still the cleanest way out. Who were you going to kill? She already knew. She needed to hear him say it. Edmund Farrell. The name landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. She felt the ripples. Why? Reuben's jaw tightened. The first sign of anything close to pain. My wife, he said. 5 years ago. He gave her the wrong diagnosis, gave her the wrong medication, He stopped, looked at the wall. She trusted him with everything. He didn't cry. She noted that, not because he didn't feel it, but because the feeling had calcified into something else, something with direction. "I decided 6 months ago," he said. "I planned every detail. Then last night I walked to his house." He paused. Someone else had already been there. Thomas Wren was dead. Reuben Cole had walked to Edmund Farrell's house last night to kill him and found Thomas Wren already there, already gone. So he turned around, walked to the police station, and confessed to a murder he didn't commit, to stop himself from doing the one he still intended to. She turned back to him. "Where is Farrell right now?" Edmund Farrell had opened his clinic at 8 a.m. Same as always. 3 patients booked before 9. A community fundraiser thank you card pinned above his desk. A half-finished cup of tea. The town trusted him with everything. Reuben's wife had trusted him with everything. Thomas Wren had been killed in his own home. No forced entry, no struggle. Someone he let inside. Reuben Cole had tried to kill Farrell and arrived too late, but Farrell was still alive, which meant Farrell had not killed Wren either, or hadn't had to. The question was no longer who confessed. The question was, what did Thomas Wren know, and who in this town needed him not to say it? She called the station chief, told him she had a voluntary confessor who did not match the physical evidence, told him she needed the cottage released for a second walkthrough. He asked if she was sure. She was not sure of anything yet. That was precisely the point. She told Briggs to keep Reuben comfortable, not charged, not released. Thomas Wren had lived in this house for 11 years, taught history at the secondary school for 14, coached the debate team, organized the harbor cleanup every September. By every measure available to the town, he was the kind of man a place like this produced once a generation. The kind it didn't know what to do with until he was gone. No forced entry. The neighbor who found him had a spare key. Wren had given it to her 3 years ago when his back was bad. The door had been locked from inside. That detail had been filed under inconclusive in the first report. Saoirse filed it differently. Whoever left this house knew the lock. She moved through the room the way she always did, not looking for what was disturbed, but for what wasn't. Most people searched a crime scene for rupture. Saoirse searched it for care. The books were untouched. The kitchen was clean. The laptop was closed. A man who expected company closed his laptop. There, beside the laptop, a gap in the dust. Rectangular. Small. Drive-sized. Either taken by forensics or taken by someone before forensics arrived. She checked the evidence log on her phone. No USB device listed. No external storage of any kind. Someone had been here before the neighbor, before the tape, before the report, and they had taken something small enough to carry in a coat pocket. She stood in Thomas Wren's living room, listening to the sea through the ajar window, and understood for the first time that this case had 2 scenes. The one everyone could see, and the one that had already been cleaned. She was outside when Saoirse emerged, standing at the tape, notebook in hand, but not open. "Lena Park," the woman said, before Saoirse could speak. "I know who you are," Saoirse replied. Every town this size had one reporter. This one had been here 3 years, and still looked like she was waiting for something specific to happen. "I'm not here for a quote," Lena said. "Then why are you here?" The younger woman looked at the cottage window. "Thomas called me," she said. 2 days ago. Said he had something I needed to see." A pause waited by the sound of the water below the cliffs. "He never sent it." "What did he say it was about?" Lena's jaw worked once. "He said it was about Farrell." She watched Saoirse's face for a reaction. Saoirse gave her nothing. "He said Farrell had been practicing medicine under a license that wasn't his." The fog reached the path. The porch light held a fake license. A dead teacher who'd found it, a missing drive, and a fisherman who'd walked into a police station to confess to a murder he hadn't committed. because he'd arrived at the real killer's house and found his work already done. Someone in this town had killed Thomas Wren to protect Edmund Farrell. And Edmund Farrell was, right now, seeing patients. "How long have you known?" Saoirse asked. Lena didn't hesitate. 3 years. The admission landed cleanly, no apology behind it. "And you didn't publish it?" "I couldn't verify the license without the original." She looked at the dark window. "Thomas could. He was the one who found the original registry." Edmund Farrell had 40 years of trust in this town. He had built it the way you build a seawall, stone by stone in good weather, so that when the storm came, no one thought to look at the foundation. Somewhere in that clinic was a man who either knew Thomas Wren was dead or had made sure of it. Saoirse needed to know which, before he realized the tape at the cottage was no longer the only thing moving in the wind. She had been gone 90 minutes. Reuben Cole had not moved, not asked for anything, not spoken to Briggs. She looked at him through the glass and thought, "This man is the only honest person in this building right now." He came here to stop himself, and in doing so, handed her the only thread she had. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer it the same way you've answered everything else." He nodded. "When you arrived at Farrell's house last night, what exactly did you find?" Reuben was still for a moment. The front light was off. His car was in the drive. "I went around back." He paused. The rear door was ajar. I could see inside. Farrell was at his desk, sitting, jacket on, glass in his hand. He looked at the table. "He wasn't moving, I thought." He stopped. Then he turned his head, picked up his phone. I couldn't hear what he said. Another pause. He looked calm, the way he always looks. What time was this? She already had the coroner's window in her head. 11:30, Reuben said. Thomas Wren's estimated time of death, between 10 p.m. and midnight. Reuben at Farrell's rear door at 11:30. Farrell inside, on the phone, composed. If Farrell had killed Wren, he had done it and returned home and poured himself a drink inside 90 minutes, or he hadn't done it at all. And someone else had done it for him. "Your wife," she said carefully, "when she was under Farrell's care, was there anyone else who raised concerns? Anyone who questioned his treatment?" Reuben's hands tightened slightly on the table. "One person," he said. "Thomas Wren." She set the pen down. They knew each other. Thomas taught with her before she got sick. Thomas told me, after she died, that something hadn't been right, that the diagnosis changed too fast, that Farrell had switched her medication without explaining why. He exhaled slowly through his nose. "I told him to let it go. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to." He stopped. 6 months ago, Thomas called me, said he'd found something. Real evidence. His eyes met hers. I told him to be careful. He said Farrell already knew. Farrell knew, 6 months ago. And Thomas Wren had kept moving anyway, finding the license registry, contacting Lena Park, preparing a drive with everything on it. A man who knew he was being watched and decided the truth was worth more than the risk. And now he was dead, and the drive was gone. And Edmund Farrell was on the phone at 11:30, composed, jacket on, a drink in his hand. Edmund Farrell had been practicing medicine in this town for 22 years. In that time, he had delivered 41 babies, spoken at 11 funerals, and served on the hospital board without interruption. The license on his wall was framed in dark oak, his name printed in clean serif type, the seal of a licensing board in a state he had not set foot in for 2 decades. He had heard about Thomas Wren on the radio at 7 a.m. He had paused his coffee, set it down carefully, then picked it up again. He had attended Thomas's debate team finals 4 years running, had shaken the man's hand after every one, had sat with him at the harbor cleanup last September, and listened to him talk about his students with genuine warmth. He was sorry, in the way that one is sorry when a familiar part of a landscape disappears. Nothing more than that. There was one detail the radio had not mentioned. The police had a confessor. His receptionist had told him her cousin worked the front desk at the station. A fisherman, Reuben Cole. Farrell knew that name. He knew exactly what Reuben Cole had lost. And he understood, with the clarity that had carried him through 22 years of careful living, that Reuben Cole being in that building was both a complication and, if managed correctly, a gift. He picked up his phone, scrolled to a number with no name attached, just an area code he recognized. It rang twice. "There's a detective at the cottage," he said, when the call connected. His voice was the same voice he used for difficult diagnoses, measured, unhurried, already past the moment of alarm. "The confessor is a problem they'll untangle by tomorrow." A pause. "The reporter is the problem." He listened. Then find out what Thomas gave her. She had 3 years of notes. Fragments, mostly. A source who spoke only in parking lots. A licensing board that stopped returning calls after the second inquiry. A name, Edmund Farrell, written at the top of a document she had never emailed, never printed, saved under a file name that meant nothing to anyone else. Thomas had been the only person who knew the file existed. 2 days ago, Thomas had called and said, "I found the original registry entry, the real one." Before the substitution, she had asked him to send it. He said he wanted to meet first. Make sure she understood the full shape of it before anything went public. She had said yes. Set a time for Friday. It was now Wednesday, and Thomas Wren was in a coroner's cold room on the mainland. She had been afraid before. That was familiar. 3 years of sitting on a story that could end a man's career. A man the entire town loved had produced a specific kind of low-grade fear she had learned to manage. This was different. Thomas had told Farrell he had the evidence. That meant Farrell knew someone had it. And now Thomas was dead. And whoever Farrell had called last night was looking for what Thomas had found. Thomas had not waited for Friday. It had arrived in her letterbox Tuesday morning. No note. Padded envelope. Handwritten address. She had recognized Thomas's writing immediately. The wide looping T. The compressed middle letters. And known, the way you know certain things before you can explain them, that it was not an ordinary delivery. She had not plugged it in. She had put it in her jacket pocket. She had kept it there through the night. Farrell knew 6 months ago. Thomas kept moving anyway. Someone killed Thomas and took a drive from his desk, but the drive wasn't there. Lena Park had it. Lena had been sitting on a story for 3 years and hadn't published it, which meant either Lena was protecting herself, or she was protecting something she wasn't ready to release, or both. She picked up her phone and called Lena's number. 3 rings. 4. "I know Thomas sent you something," Saoirse said when the call connected. Silence on the line. Not the silence of denial, but the silence of someone recalibrating how much the other person already knows. "Where are you right now?" Another pause. Then Lena's voice lower than before. "My office. Above the harbor." The harbor was quiet. Mid-morning, the fishing boats already back. The market closed on Wednesdays. Rain on planking. Ropes ticking against masts in the wind. A town that looked, from the outside, exactly like a place where nothing of consequence ever happened. It had looked that way for 22 years. That was the point. Lena placed it on the desk without being asked. Saoirse looked at it, did not touch it. "When did it arrive?" "Tuesday morning." "Have you accessed it?" A beat. "No." Saoirse looked up. "Why not?" Lena's hands came together in her lap. "Because once I do," she said quietly, "I can't put it back. And I wanted to understand what Thomas walked into before I decided what I was willing to walk into." "I've been afraid of Farrell for 3 years," she said. Not a confession, a statement. Clear and level. Not physically, afraid of what happens to a story when the wrong person finds out you're building it. Afraid of what this town does to the person who takes down its favorite son. She looked at the drive. Thomas wasn't afraid, and Thomas is dead. So now I'm deciding whether his version of courage was right or just fatal. "I'm going to take this drive into evidence," Saoirse said. "Before I do, is there anything on it that connects to you personally? Anything I need to know before it goes into the log?" Lena held her gaze. "There might be," she said. "My name might be in there. Thomas knew I'd been building the case. He may have documented it." She paused. "There's something else." Saoirse waited. "He said it wasn't only Farrell's license." Her voice dropped. "He said it goes back further than the license. Much further. His 2 p.m. patient canceled. He told his receptionist to hold the afternoon. Closed his office door. The drive wasn't at the cottage, which meant Thomas had sent it before he died. Which meant it was already somewhere in this town, in someone else's hands. He stood at his desk and thought, with the same systematic clarity that had carried him through every difficulty for 22 years, about exactly how many people now knew his name in connection with something that could not be explained away. And for the first time since 7 a.m., Edmund Farrell counted past 2. Further than the license, she turned that over, on the stairs, in the rain, all the way back to her car. Thomas Wren had been a history teacher. He had coached debate. He had organized harbor cleanups and sat with Reuben Cole after his wife died and spent 6 months building a case against the most trusted man in town. What had he found that was worse than a fake license? 22 years. Farrell had been here 22 years. Reuben's wife had died 5 years ago. Lena had started building the case 3 years ago. Thomas had found something 6 months ago and told Farrell he had it. The license was the surface. Whatever was beneath it had been buried long enough that a dude, man who found it, had decided the only safe move was to mail the evidence before he met anyone face to face. She picked up the evidence bag, turned it over once, set it back down. Reuben Cole had been in that room for 4 hours and 11 minutes. He had not been charged. He had not been released. He existed in the station the way a ship exists at anchor, technically free, practically held. She had told Briggs, "Keep him comfortable." Briggs had interpreted this as a second paper cup of bad coffee. Reuben had not touched it either. "Did Thomas ever tell you what exactly he'd found?" Reuben looked at her steadily. "He said the license was a copy, that the original belonged to a doctor who died in 1998. He paused. "He said Farrell had been using that man's credentials since before he came here." She absorbed this. "Did he say who the man was?" Reuben nodded once. "His brother." His brother, Edmund Farrell, had been practicing under a dead man's license for 22 years. A dead man who shared his blood. Which meant the board that issued the license had never met the man who used it. Which meant every patient, every diagnosis, every prescription, every hand shaken at every funeral, had been administered by a man with no verified medical training. And Reuben's wife had been one of them. "Thomas found the original death certificate," Reuben said quietly. "The brother died in a hospital fire in Oregon. 98. Edmund was listed as next of kin, no other relatives." He looked at the table. "Thomas said there was no record of Edmund Farrell having attended any medical school, anywhere, under any name." The lamp hummed. Outside, rain found the high window again. Why didn't Thomas go to the police, she asked. She needed to hear Reuben's version. "He tried," Reuben said, 2 years ago. Took what he had then to the station. She felt the sentence before it landed. "Who did he speak to?" Reuben looked at her directly. His voice was even, careful, the voice of a man handing someone a weight he knows is too heavy, and doing it anyway. "The chief," he said. "The chief." The man she had called this morning to release the cottage for a second walkthrough. The man who had asked her if she was sure. She thought about that question now with different geometry. Not, "Are you sure about the evidence?" but, "Are you sure you want to keep pulling?" He had built 22 years of this. Not carelessly, with extraordinary care. Every detail, every relationship, every patient file managed to the standard of a man who understood that the gap between his knowledge and his credentials could only be bridged by results. He had produced results. People had lived under his care. Some had not. That was true of every doctor. That was what he told himself. Had always told himself. The drive was out there. A reporter had it. A detective was building toward something. And Reuben Cole, a man who had come to kill him and been beaten to it by someone else, was in a police station describing probably everything Thomas had told him. He had managed worse. He had managed 22 years of worse, but he had never before managed it while someone else's hands were already on the evidence. He turned from the window, picked up the phone, did not dial immediately, looked at the license on the wall. His brother had been the good one, the studied one, the one who sat the exams and earned the name. Edmund had watched, had read everything Marcus read, had memorized everything Marcus memorized. When Marcus died in that fire, Edmund had stood in the hospital corridor and understood, with a cold, complete clarity he had never felt before or since, that Marcus's death was also, if he chose it, a door. He had chosen it. He had walked through. He had never once looked back. Until now. The chief had been running this station for 14 years. He had been here 6 years before Thomas Wren went to him. He had filed nothing, opened nothing, called no one. She thought about the question he had asked her this morning on the phone. "Are you sure?" She thought about the particular texture of that question now, the weight it carried that she had not assigned it at the time. She pushed off the wall, walked past the chief's office without slowing, went to her desk. Chief Raymond Burr. 18 years in this department. Before that, 6 years in county. Before that, she pulled up the personnel file on her screen, typed his name, scrolled past the commendations, the service record, the evaluations, then stopped. His first posting. Before county, a small coastal town in northern Oregon. A clinic he had cited twice in noise complaints. A doctor whose name appeared on both citations, Edmund Farrell. 24 years ago, they had been in the same town. Before this town. Before Farrell rebuilt himself here under his brother's name and Burr followed, or was brought, 2 years later. Not a coincidence. A structure. Two men who had found each other before the lie was fully constructed and had decided, separately or together, that the lie was worth maintaining. She closed the screen, sat back, looked at the ceiling. The drive had to be logged. That was procedure. Every piece of evidence, through the chain of custody, through the station system, through the log that the chief reviewed every morning at 7 a.m. If she logged it today, Burr would see it tonight, would know what was on it, would have 12 hours before she could get it to the county forensics lab. 12 hours was enough, she knew that. Burr knew she would know that. She had one person outside the station she trusted completely. One person who owed her nothing, wanted nothing from this case, and had the clearance to receive evidence directly if she documented the chain correctly. Detective Sergeant Yolanda Marsh, County Major Crimes. They had worked together 8 years ago on a financial fraud case that the local department had also managed to lose. Yolanda had not forgotten how it was lost. Neither had Saoirse. She spoke for 4 minutes. Gave Yolanda the structure without the detail. Enough to establish jurisdiction, enough to explain why it couldn't go through the local log. Not enough to expose Reuben or Lena before she had something solid. When she finished, Yolanda was quiet for a moment. Then, "How long have you been sitting on this?" "Since this morning." Another pause. And your chief doesn't know you're calling me." It wasn't a question. "Not yet," Saoirse said. From above, the town looked like itself. Unchanged. Weathered and ordinary and permanent, the way coastal towns always look, as if the sea has been wearing at them long enough that nothing short of the sea itself could move them. But inside the frame of that ordinary skyline, 4 people were now holding different pieces of the same truth. And somewhere among them, a 5th person was calculating how long he had before those pieces found each other. He had spent 22 years managing information, what people knew, what they suspected, what they could prove. The detective was good. He had registered that immediately. She was asking the right questions in the wrong order, which meant she was close, but not yet assembled. The reporter had the drive, but hadn't published. That restraint had a reason. Restraint always had a reason. He needed to find Lena Park's reason before Saoirse Dunne found the drive. He knew something about Lena Park that Lena Park believed no one else knew. 3 years ago, before she began building the case against him, before she was building anything, she had come to him as a patient. A single appointment. A private matter she had paid for in cash. No insurance filed. No record in the system she could access. He had kept that record. He kept everything. That was the only rule he had never broken. He picked up his phone. The number was the clinic's main line. She knew it by memory. She had called it 100 times in 3 years, asking for records, for comment, for confirmation of appointments that she was told did not exist. She watched it ring. 4 times. 5. It stopped, then immediately began again. Same number. Her hand stayed where it was, but her eyes moved to the drawer where she had put the drive. And stayed there. Yolanda would meet her at the county line at 5. The drive would go into county custody directly, bypassing the station log entirely. She would document the chain herself, time-stamped, witnessed, airtight. It would cost her. Going around the chief was not something a person did in a department this size without consequence. It would be noticed, it would be remembered, it would end something between her and this station that had been fragile for 18 years anyway. She started the car. She had left this town at 26 because of what it knew about her family, what it had decided about her family, the version of events it had chosen and maintained because the true version was too uncomfortable for a place this size to hold. She had come back at 44 because her mother was sick and there was no one else. She had not come back to fix anything. She had not come back to be right about anything. But there was a drive on the passenger seat, and a dead teacher who had spent 6 months making sure it reached the right hands. And Saoirse Dunne, who had spent 18 years being the wrong hands for this town, was beginning to wonder if Thomas Wren had known something about that too. She had 90 minutes before the county line. Enough time for one more stop. She had been avoiding it since she arrived. Not consciously. The case had kept her moving, which was its own kind of avoidance. But the personnel record was open on her desk screen, and the question it produced was one she couldn't hand to Yolanda Marsh along with the drive. This one she had to carry herself. Chief Burr was in his office. She had checked before she left. His car in the lot, his light on, his door closed in the particular way it closed when he was on a call he didn't want overheard. She had not gone in. She had taken the evidence bag, walked past his door, and left the building without signing out. She would deal with that consequence when it arrived. Right now, she needed to talk to her mother's house. She had been sleeping here for 6 weeks, the spare room with the low ceiling and the window that faced the garden wall. 6 weeks of careful dinners and careful conversations, navigating the 18 years of distance between them with the same precision she brought to crime scenes. Her mother had been Edmund Farrell's patient for 9 years. Her mother looked smaller than she had 6 weeks ago. That was the illness, the slow subtraction of it, the way it took the frame of a person gradually, so gradually that each individual visit you told yourself it was the same, until a day came when you looked and understood it wasn't and hadn't been for some time. You look like the case. her mother said. It was not a complaint. It was an observation delivered with the precision of a woman who had spent 40 years reading her daughter's face. She asked carefully. Started 3 years back. When had Farrell changed her medication? Which medications? Whether he had ever explained the changes, whether she had ever questioned them. Her mother answered each question with the patience of someone who had been answering Saoirse's questions since she was 7 years old, and had long ago learned that the questions did not stop until the answer produced something that fit. "Why are you asking about Edmund?" she said finally. Saoirse looked at her. "When did he start treating you?" 2008, her mother said. Same year he came on the hospital board, 2008. The hospital board. The same year Burr made chief. A structure, not a coincidence. 3 positions locked together. The clinic, the station, the hospital board. And at the center of all 3, a man with no verified training and 22 years of careful results. She thought of Reuben Cole's wife. She thought of her mother's medication changes. She thought of how many patients were in that filing cabinet, and how many of them had trusted Edmund Farrell with everything they had. Saoirse. Her mother's voice was even, the voice she used when she had decided to say something she had been holding. The reason you left this town. A pause. It wasn't only the scandal, was it? Not a question. The phrasing of a woman who had spent 18 years with a partial answer and had just watched her daughter's posture confirm the rest. Saoirse did not turn from the window. No, she said. It wasn't only that. 18 years ago, Saoirse had been 26 and new to the department, and she had filed a complaint against the chief at the time, Burr's predecessor, about a case that was closed too fast. About a patient who had died and whose family had been told it was natural causes. About a doctor whose name appeared on the file. The complaint had been reviewed. Dismissed. And 3 months later, Saoirse had been asked, quietly and without documentation, to consider whether she was happy in this posting. She had left by the end of the month. She had left. Thomas Wren had not. Thomas had stayed and taught debate and organized harbor cleanups, and 6 months ago found the evidence and decided it was worth more than the risk. She turned from the window, looked at her mother. "I need you to do something for me," she said. Her mother closed the book in her lap. "I need you to call your GP on the mainland and have your full medication history reviewed. Tonight, if you can." Her mother looked at her for a long moment. "How serious is this?" Saoirse held her gaze. "It's serious." 4:47 p.m. The town was moving into evening the way it always did. Boats secured, shops closing, the harbor settling into its night sounds of water and rope and wind. Lena Park's window was dark. She had not answered Farrell's call. She had not answered a second call from a number she didn't recognize 40 minutes later. She was either safe or she was not, and Saoirse would know which in 11 minutes when she reached the harbor. The office window was dark, but the entrance light was on. She tried the door. Unlocked. Inside, the stairwell light off, the narrow steps going up into shadow, from somewhere above. Not the office floor. The floor above it. The sound of a door. Not closing. Having recently closed. The specific acoustic of a space that has just been vacated by someone who did not want to be heard leaving. She took the stairs, 2 at a time. She was on the floor. Unhurt. The desk lamp smashed, not by violence, by being knocked in haste. The laptop closed and moved to the filing cabinet top, the drawer where she had put the drive hanging open. Empty. Saoirse crossed the room in 4 steps. Crouched. "Are you hurt?" Lena shook her head. "Who was here?" Lena looked up at her. Her voice was entirely level, the levelness of shock that has not yet decided what shape it will take. "He came himself," she said. "Edmund Farrell came himself." "Walk me through it." "Exactly." Lena's breathing was controlled. The deliberate control of a person who has decided that falling apart is a luxury she cannot afford right now. He knocked. I didn't answer. He had a key. She looked at the open drawer. "I didn't know he had a key." Saoirse said nothing. Let the silence do its work. He was very calm, Lena said. That was the worst part. He was completely calm. He didn't touch anything. He stood in the doorway and told me he knew I had something that belonged to a patient of his, that patient records were confidential, that releasing them would constitute a serious legal violation. She paused. He said it the way he says everything, like he was explaining something to someone who just needed the information and would obviously then make the right decision. He said my name once, just once, at the end. Before he left, he had come for the drive. And the drive was not here, because Lena had given it to her, because it was in the boot of her car outside her mother's house on the other side of town. Farrell had come here, used a key he should not have had, stood in this room, said Lena's name once, and left with nothing. He didn't know the drive was already gone, which meant he thought he still had time. You're not staying here tonight. Lena didn't argue. He said my name, she repeated, quieter now, as if cataloging it for later. I know, Saoirse said. He wanted you to hear it. He wanted you to understand that he knows exactly who you are. She picked up Lena's jacket from the floor where it had fallen, handed it to her, which means you are not a variable to him anymore. You're a decision he hasn't made yet. Get your laptop. Nothing else. Let's go. The street was empty. The clinic was still lit. His car was not in the lot. She checked without slowing. He was somewhere in the town, in the dark between the buildings, and she did not know which direction he had gone from this building or how long ago. She put Lena in the passenger seat, took the wheel, checked the boot was locked, started the engine. She dialed Yolanda on the hands-free. I'm leaving now. I'm bringing a witness. A pause on the line. Complication? Farrell moved. He went to the reporter's office himself. She heard Yolanda absorb this. Then he knows the drive is out. He thinks it's still in the building. He didn't find it. Another pause. Saoirse. I know. Drive carefully. The call ended. He had not found it. He had gone through every drawer, every shelf, every surface, methodically, without disturbing more than necessary, as he did everything. It was not there, which meant Lena Park had moved it, or given it to someone, or it had never been there to begin with, and she had been lying to him about its location, which would mean she was less afraid of him than he had calculated. He sat in the dark and recalibrated. The detective had been at the Harbor Building earlier. He knew that. His receptionist's cousin had mentioned the car. If Lena had given the drive to Dunne, it was already in the evidence chain. If it was in the local chain, Burr could manage it. If it had gone somewhere else, county, state, then the local chain was irrelevant, and 22 years of careful management ended tonight in a room he had never been inside. He picked up his phone, called Burr. Reuben Cole had been in that room for 9 hours and 40 minutes. He had been given a sandwich at 3 p.m. that he had eaten half of. He had asked for nothing else. He did not know about the drive. Did not know about Lena. Did not know that the case had moved past his confession 6 hours ago and was now somewhere on a rain-dark road between this town and the county line. He knew only what he had come here knowing, that Edmund Farrell was still alive, and that he himself had chosen this morning not to be the reason he wasn't. She saw them in the mirror at the first bend. A single car, no plates visible in the rain, maintaining distance, not closing, not falling back. The specific interval of a car that knows where you're going and doesn't need to hurry. She kept her speed, kept both hands on the wheel. Beside her, Lena had gone very still. The stillness of someone who has also seen the mirror and is waiting to be told what it means. Don't turn around, Saoirse said. 12 minutes to the county line. Yolanda was already there. She had confirmed it 20 minutes ago. The drive was in the boot. The witness was beside her. The case was built. Everything she needed was in this car or at the end of this road. The only question was whether the lights behind her knew that. and whether knowing it was enough to make them close the distance. She pressed the accelerator. The lights behind her did the same. 8 minutes to the county line. The lights were 40 meters back and closing. She did not accelerate further. The road was wet and the fog was full, and dying on a coastal bend solved nothing for anyone. She kept her speed. She kept her hands steady. Beside her, Lena was looking straight ahead, both hands flat on the laptop in her lap, the posture of a person who has decided that stillness is the only useful contribution she can make right now. I have a tail. Single vehicle. Started at the first bend past the harbor. Yolanda's voice came back flat and fast. How far out are you? 7 minutes. I'll call County Patrol. Keep your speed. The call stayed open. Saoirse set the phone on the dash, both hands back on the wheel. The headlights behind her were 30 meters now. She heard Lena exhale slowly beside her. One long, controlled breath. Then, silence. The road ahead. The fog. The rain. The county line sign appeared in the headlights at 6 minutes. Then the pull-off. Gravel. A barrier light. Yolanda's unmarked car already there. A county patrol unit beside it. 2 officers standing at the barrier in rain gear. The lights behind her did not slow at first. 20 meters. 15. Then, brake lights. Red, washing the fog. The following car pulling wide on the gravel, stopping short of the barrier, stopping exactly at the line. Inside it, no movement. Yolanda took the evidence bag without ceremony, signed the chain documentation on the hood of the car in the rain, handed Saoirse a copy. The county patrol unit had moved toward the stopped car behind them. Plates run, driver identified. The officer came back, spoke briefly to Yolanda. Yolanda looked at Saoirse. Chief Raymond Burr, she said, alone, no weapon visible. A pause. He's not getting out. Saoirse looked back at the stationary headlights. He knows, she said. He knew the moment he turned onto this road. At 9:47 p.m., Officer Briggs opened the interrogation room door and told Reuben Cole he was free to go. County order. No charges. Reuben stood, straightened his jacket, picked up nothing because he had brought nothing. He walked past Briggs into the corridor. The chief's office dark now, the door open, the desk lamp off for the first time in 14 years. He walked through the station and out the front door into the rain without looking back. Edmund Farrell was taken into county custody at 10:14 p.m. He said nothing during the arrest. Nothing during the processing. Nothing during the first interview. Conducted by Yolanda Marsh in a county room that was identical to every other county room, except that it was not in his town. He asked for water. He was given water. He folded his hands on the table and looked at the wall and was, by every external measure, the same man he had always been. The license on the clinic wall was sealed behind evidence tape before midnight. The drive contained everything Thomas Wren had found. The brother's death certificate, the original licensing record, Farrell's absence from every medical school registry in the country, 14 years of patient files cross-referenced against anomalous treatment decisions, and one additional document she had not anticipated, a letter Thomas had written addressed to no one, dated 3 weeks before he died. It began, I want whoever reads this to understand that I knew what I was doing. I knew what it might cost. I did it anyway. She found her own name in the 15th page. Thomas Wren had known about the complaint she had filed 18 years ago, had found the dismissed report in an archived filing that should have been destroyed, had documented it, had written beside it, in the careful handwriting she now recognized. She was right. She was always right. They made sure she wouldn't stay to prove it. She set the document down, looked at the ceiling of a county room she had never been in before. Then she picked it back up and kept reading. By morning, the town knew, the way small towns know things, not from an announcement, not from a broadcast, but from the accumulation of small signals. A clinic sealed, a chief's car gone from the lot, a patrol car outside the harbor building overnight, a fisherman walking home at 10 p.m. when everyone expected him to be charged. The town woke into a version of itself it had been living inside for 22 years without knowing it. That was the part no announcement could prepare anyone for. She had driven back at 5 a.m., had not gone to the station, had not gone to her mother's house, had come here instead, to the harbor wall where she had sat as a child, where the town looked different from the waterside, where the secrets of it were less visible than from the inside. Thomas Wren had known about her, had included her in the record he built, had trusted that whoever found it would understand what it meant that she had been here and been removed and had come back. She was not sure she understood it yet, but she was sitting with it, which was more than she had done with most things in 18 years. Farrell would be charged. Burr would be charged. The hospital board would be investigated. The patient files would go to an independent medical review that would take 18 months and produce a report that most people in this town would find too painful to read fully. Reuben Cole would not be charged with anything. The prosecutor would note that a man sitting voluntarily in a police station for 10 hours, preventing himself from committing a crime, was not a thing the law had a clean category for. They would find one eventually. It would not involve a cell. Her phone lit up on the stone beside her. Lena Park's article went live at 6 a.m. Saoirse had known it was coming. Had known since the harbor office, since the drive, since the look on Lena's face in the county station when she said goodnight, the look of a person who had been carrying a story for 3 years and had finally located the courage Thomas Wren had been trying to give her. She picked up the phone, read the notification, set it back down, looked at the water. The article named Edmund Farrell. It named Raymond Burr. It named the hospital board. It named the licensing failure, the 22 years, the patient records, the dismissed complaint of 18 years ago. It named the detective who had filed that complaint, who had been quietly removed from this town, who had come back and this time had not been quiet, and this time had not been removed. Lena Park had named her not as an afterthought. She had named her first, as the beginning of the story, as the reason it had a different ending,